Welcome to Your Impact Story. Our goal is to inspire you to have a positive impact on the world around you. And now, here is author, speaker, coach, and our host, Dustin Rogers.
Hey friends, welcome back to Your Impact Story podcast. I'm Dustin Rogers. I'm excited today. We've got a great episode lined up for you. I've got my friend Steve Hindman here today. Steve has worked as a senior executive for both small and large companies within the security, computer storage, application performance management, and networking IT industry segments. He has worked at AT&T, Hughes Networks, Visual Networks, NetApp, and Symantec, and helped with lead their sales, product management, marketing, and business development functions during massive disruptive change within the industry. Steve has particular depth in cloud computing, managed services, subscription-based business models, and go-to-market strategies. Steve has a BS in industrial engineering from the University of Nebraska and attended Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program 153 in 1997. Steve and his wife Ann have 3 children, Alex, Ben, and Amanda, and they like to stay active volunteering, traveling, cycling, golf, and reading. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dustin. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Steve, you and I got to know each other in the Charlotte Business MDP program, Managers Development Program through the Harvard Business School Club of Charlotte. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show, but just tell me a little bit more about yourself so everybody on the show now has heard your bio. They've seen a little bit of your past, but just tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me early on, was there somebody in your life early on that impacted you?
Yes, definitely. My parents, I know that's not a unusual response to that question, but it truly is what shaped me. Both of them grew up, in Omaha and were pretty poor, and neither one of them finished college. And like anything, when you feel like you have an insecurity around something, then you dive even, more or all in more towards something. And that was definitely the case with both of them in different ways. My dad, for instance, he just figured if he didn't have a college education, he was going to outwork everybody to get ahead. And so it was, I kid you not, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for him. I can remember getting up and opening up presents with both of them on Christmas morning, and then he would head off to work at noon. So it was just, that, like I say, his way to get ahead. And, that's how he saw that he could. And my mom, it was a little different because my dad worked so hard. She had the kids she wanted, and they both were in agreement that they wanted to have, a stay-at-home parent, my mom in the traditional sense. And then as we got a little bit older, she would then spend more of her time volunteering and Meals on Wheels, and she'd go to the local hospital and go around to elderly patients and bring them things and food and so forth. And so learned from both of them, both the working hard to get ahead, as well as then giving back, and the importance of that and the joy, frankly, that I saw through my mom of that.
Absolutely. We'll definitely talk about that some on today's show on how you continue to give back. Let's talk a little bit more about your career and how that career progressed. So you got that work ethic and the drive from your father. Tell me a little bit more about your career. You had an exciting career with a lot of depth to it, a strong resume. Tell us a little bit about just your career besides what they heard on the bio there.
Sure. If I had to sum it up, and again, this may not come as a surprise, but the obviously it was in information technology throughout, and the places that I was at, if I had to use a word to describe what was going on in every one of those places, it was disruption.
Mhm.
Massive changes. When I started at AT&T, this was in 1980, largest company on the planet, over 1 million employees, highly profitable, also quasi-regulated. At least the rate of return was regulated. And then it went through the breakup, the divestiture, as they called it. And so massive changes with that. And then not only with that, but then the evolution of the internet. And I can literally remember I was with AT&T Long Lines, which was the long distance side of the largest company on the planet. And it was by far the most profitable. It was the crown jewels of that company.
Sure.
And today it doesn't even exist.
Mhm.
That company, that revenue stream, those billions are, now all done over the internet through Skype and all these other over the top services. So to say that disruption it was how I would, basically summarize that, including some of the smaller companies that are finding, their own niches that they're trying to grow up in. And so it was a very interesting career that way, but disruption is how I would summarize it.
Well, that's a great summary, a great career, and I think that one thing that we don't learn in school, in traditional education for sure, is managing change, right? Is rolling with the punches, and how do we handle disruption? How do we handle what's next and evolve? One of the ways that we can do that in later in career are programs like you went to at Harvard Business School, right? Tell us a little bit about that. So AT&T sent you up to Harvard. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Sure. So yes, AT&T in 1997, basically, they would send two people from AT&T every year up to the AMP program. And this kind of relates back to our earlier conversation. Since my mom or dad had never graduated from college, first of all, for me and my older brother and younger sister, there was no question that you were going to go to college. It was grade 13, 14, and 15 in their view.
Sure.
So went to school at Nebraska, and that was why there was a little bit of extra incentive for me to want to go to the AMP program, to go to Harvard. I mean, there was definitely the wanting to make your parents proud side of that. Even though it's kind of hard, especially as you're on the treadmill of any company, it's hard to take, those several months out. And so obviously
Sure.
you have to have the support of your boss and the company, but it's still a hard thing to do, to step away, and with three small kids as well. But at any rate, it was a wonderful experience. If I had to put, yes, we did the cases, and yes, they were wonderful, and the instructors, the professors were wonderful, but it was the people that you met in the class. There's in the AMP program that particular year, there were 150 people. Probably half were from other countries.
Wow.
And so and various sized companies. And so being there and getting to know them and really being able to dig in to their company's issues, opportunities, but also their cultures. I mean, we have our own living groups, and so you'd be working till late and discussing a case, and then you'd get a chance to talk to somebody from Malaysia, or somebody who's in a business in Germany or whatever, and then really, make that relevant to your own experience and to your own career was absolutely invaluable. And the thing that to this day, especially that living group, we still stay in touch. We do reunions every 2 years, and it's just been a wonderful thing. The content on the case study side was great, but I have to say the one that had the longest legs were the networking, getting to know those people and to stay in touch with some of those folks over time.
Absolutely. I think when networking is done right, there's no I'm part of a few associations that highlight networking, and I've heard people say, "Oh, that's all they talk about is networking." But when you really engage in that networking and you use that network, the sky's the limit as to where that can take you, and you have no idea, how you may need that person in the future. But it continues to evolve as life goes on, and you say, "Hey, wait a minute! I know something comes up," and you say, "I know just the person to call for that or to talk through that with," and that's a great thing for sure. And so you went through the advanced management program through Harvard Business School. In 2014, you moved down to Charlotte. In 2016, in 15, I think it was, you said that you began working through Harvard Business School Club of Charlotte and their managers development program. Let's talk a little bit about the program. So for those of you who don't know, the Harvard Business School Club of Charlotte offers a mini MBA style course for mid-career executives. It's taught by 26 Harvard Business School alumni. And I'll let Steve talk a little bit about the program. He has been the chair of that program since 2019.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. This is one of those where absolutely when I first started, I just got an email and basically saying, hey, do you want to teach a case from your industry or your area of expertise? And I was like, well, this is really interesting. I had always had a Jones to teach, and so to have that opportunity, I thought, well, this is great. This is something that can kind of scratch that itch and kind of keep you um, you know involved in other ways, because I was getting closer to retirement at that point. And so any rate, so I accepted, became an instructor, taught a case about autonomous vehicles. Part of it was what was going on in that, but the other part was kind of back to what I talked about before with disruption. I spend about a third or so of the case talking about what to do to both see disruption coming and how to navigate that both within your company but also individually. So that's why I picked these cases where you can see massive disruption like what I went through, and basically try and apply some of the things that I think I learned to some of these other cases and industries, because certainly with AI and you name it, biotechnology and so forth, I feel that everybody, if they haven't been disrupted, they soon will be, just from one angle or another. And so I think the need to develop those skills are really critical. So at any rate, went to teach that and picked that. Disruption is definitely a thread through that. And then in 2019, Bill Berry, who is one of the founders of the program, wanted to be closer to his grandkids in Connecticut, and he asked if I'd run the program starting in 2019, which I was more than happy to do. And
Sure.
real quickly, sorry for the long-winded answer. The reason I really dove into MDP and wanted and was willing to take on even a bigger role is that the tuitions. So the companies that they sponsor somebody to come to MDP, and we take the tuition money less direct expenses for like the room, the food, the case studies that we buy. So about 80-85% of our tuition money we donate to local area nonprofits. And I just think it's the coolest model, where you've got, alumni teaching cases they're passionate about, that they've spent years in, that they've learned something, to up and coming managers. So all of that is good for the sponsoring companies, as well as the people, the HBS alums who are donating their time. And then all of that's going back to to nonprofits to then help the local community. I just think it's one of those circular business models that keeps feeding on itself, that I just thought was really cool. So I couldn't be prouder of being a part of it and taking on a bigger role.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that was one of the highlights of the program to me, having some history working with nonprofits in the past through my auction career primarily. But I think that it's amazing the network that we have, but I think every nonprofit out there needs donor engagement. They need opportunity to get the message out of what they're doing to more and more people. So you mentioned Bill Berry. You mentioned how you've tied in and intertwined MDP with supporting a nonprofit. The instructor gets to choose. The program supports that nonprofit, also highlights it. One of those programs that you came to know through MDP was the Relatives in Charlotte. Is that right?
That's correct. They work with kids from basically kindergarten up through 24 years of age. And so they have a crisis center where, by the way, if you ever see the stay safe, there's a sign. Anyway, all of the Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, if a kid shows up and says, I have nowhere to go, that's where you call. You call the relatives,
Okay.
and they take you into their crisis center, which they then work with the various agencies to find stable housing and a situation to go to. And that happens more frequently than any of us would like. And then at about 18, not about, at 18 to 24, they have what's called an on-ramp. And that's for primarily foster kids that have aged out of the system that, again, they haven't had the support systems, the parents to kind of help them learn life skills and things that they need to know to survive. And you can imagine thinking back at, when somebody's 18 and all of a sudden it's you and you don't have anybody to learn to lean on financially or mentoring wise. So at any rate, that was a population that I just thought, is the most, needy or would need some help. And I thought could help. So I focused really on the on-ramp part of the relatives. And just make a long story short, you think going in, hey, I'm going to do this. I thought I was going to help somebody get a GED, help somebody build a resume. And I would spend a couple hours with one of the kids and then say, let me know, after you get the resume built and we'll go take the next step and we'll apply. And they'd disappear. And I'm like, was it something I did or said or,
Right.
or whatever. And the counselors kept saying, trust me, it's not that. In the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they are dealing with food and shelter. And so, and I found that out for myself that, 2/3 of them are homeless. So they're wondering where they're going to stay or what couch they're going to surf on that night. So, brushing up their resume isn't top of mind. So anyway, trying to figure out how could I be relevant. I essentially became the driver's ed instructor there. So and I've found that that's one way to get their attention. After you've ridden on a bus to go to the Amazon distribution center and it takes 2.5 hours each way, that catches their attention and keeps their attention. So that's been the way that I've been able to find to make a difference, have an impact. And then after you do that and do the practice driving in my car, then you build a sense of trust. They know you're not a one and done volunteer. And so with that trust, then you can, and they learn the process of persevering to get their license. Then you can use that to open up a discussion like, hey, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Hey, how, maybe I can help you get your GED and then you can get there. And now they trust you, believe you. And now they have a success story to kind of say, and I know I can do it. And Steve will help me do that. So it's been a learning experience both ways. But that's where I found my niche, and MDP opened that door.
Absolutely. That's an awesome story. It's outstanding. You went with the desire to give back, right? The desire to volunteer, but you thought that you knew, going in, this is how I can help. But it turns out that you found an impact in a different way that I think had a significantly greater impact on the lives of those individuals that you're working with and supporting. So kudos for what you're doing, what you continue to do. You and I talked offline before about foster care, and my family and I have been foster parents, and the work that goes into that. But then there are those segments, right, where as a child grows and ages out, it's wonderful the work that the relatives are doing to try to just help those older youth and folks that have aged out of the system, if you will, to become independent, right? To become successful parts of society. And it's amazing. We probably, a lot of people overthink or overlook the need for a driver's license and the number of people that don't have that. Um, so it's outstanding that you saw that need and didn't run from it, but you leaned into it, right? That goes back to your parents. Your dad had the drive and the work ethic, and your mom was volunteering every chance she got, and you have embraced both of those throughout your life and career to give back. And I think that's a really an awesome thing in how you've done it and how you continue to do it. So you're still working with the relatives. You're still working with the MDP program. You also have some consulting work that you do, or work that you do in supporting people in retirement planning, and it's a part of retirement planning that I don't think people, or probably a lot of people, overlook, right? They look on their 401k, they look at their IRA, their total financial components as they prepare, right? And they're looking for the green arrow and the box to hit that date for them to walk, for them to step away and to be able to retire and financially have the ability to retire. But let's talk a little bit about diversified retirement planning and how that works, and what you do to support folks in that way, or what you suggest to people who are leaning towards the retirement age.
Yeah, I think it's something that's you'll see articles occasionally, but I do think it's an underserved discussion topic with retirement. Everything is monetary, which is important. Clearly, money doesn't give you happiness, but it gives you choices, and so you got to have the money to be able to make the choices. Like being able to volunteer, like being able to do what I am doing. So but it's only half the coin, and the other half is what does make you happy. And it's not something that you should put off to where all of a sudden you are retired and now you're asking yourself that question: what makes me happy, and what should I be doing? Because not that I mean, it's never too late, but it just I would offer that it's something that you want to be thinking about and testing and piloting, if you will, before you retire, in terms of trying out some of these things and going and volunteering, like I had with the relatives, and finding out, all right, I like this, but this isn't, having the impact that I thought. Well, what else could? And so by the time I did actually retire, then you had a pretty good idea in that uh, bucket of what you wanted to do. But the other thing I would just offer, and again, people may have other ways they would categorize it, but I would say, just like the rooms on a house, you need to have more than one room when it comes to your retirement plan. So yes, there's the volunteering aspect, and that is a significant part of my time, as is the MDP piece of it. But what about the mind? What about the body? What about your spirit? In other ways. And so it's kind of consciously thinking about those, and what brings you joy in those, or where do you think that you need to build your muscle mass in those areas, that you consciously, intentionally think about that and go try those things out. What are some things that you would love to do on that? And it varies for people, but you've got to feed all parts of that, and intentionally so. And sometimes one of them will necessarily expand and be much more of a larger percentage of your retirement time. But then it'll start to shrink for various reasons, and another one will grow, including your family. And that's a huge part of that for me, is being able to have the time to stay connected with your family, and also reaching back to people that you've lost touch with over time, and consciously going back and just saying, instead of asking for something, it's just saying, hey, we've lost touch. I'd love to have a quick, half an hour. We'll have virtual lunch together and get caught up. But anyway, the point being, everybody's got their columns or their pillars that could be different, but be intentional on having those, and be intentional on investing in those, including before you actually retire.
No, I think Steve, that's great advice. And we talk a lot about, in my work, I talk a lot about time management and control over the calendar, trying to play defense with my own calendar. And it's easy to think that when you get to retirement, that changes, that you just, you throw the desk calendar and the Google calendar or whatever you may be working off of, you throw those out the window. But the truth is, you have to be intentional with your time in retirement as well, and find time or create time to do the things you enjoy, along with anything else that you got going on in your life, time with family, time with volunteering, and giving back, which you're doing a great job of. But that intentionality that you learn and work with your control over the calendar goes into retirement, or should go into retirement, to make sure that you're making time for yourself in the way that you want to.
Absolutely. Well said. If you don't, then it'll just happen, and you'll find yourself in front of the idiot box too much, or whatever. So it's one of those things where, by having those goals, and then when you have those moments, back to the relatives, all you have to do is see one of those kids come sprinting out of the DMV after they got their license,
Hmm.
and it sticks. That was more joy than anything in my 40-year career. And
Sure.
so you see something like that, and then you realize, okay, this is why I do this. And there's going to be those days when you're frustrated as hell when 4 o'clock runs and the DMV says, sorry, the wizard can't see you today, come back tomorrow. And you want to rip somebody's face off, but you realize, and anyway, the point being that, it's very important to find out where you want to, where you find joy, and by looking back, that can instruct you as to where you think that, would be in the future. For me, it was remembering my mom, remembering the joy she brought home, and then saying, I think that's me. I think that's where I need to find it. For somebody else, it could be different in other ways, but it's being intentional. And I think, like you say, there's nothing magical about retiring that, changes the process
Right.
of being successful at that.
Well, I think it's great advice, and it's awesome that you like I said, we see people in the times in our life where our paths cross, right? But you found ways to succeed, and ways to, more importantly, create impact all along the way. And that's really what this show is all about, is inspiring people to have a positive impact on the world around them. And so I appreciate you continuing to do that, and hopefully inspiring other people through this. You and I met through continuing education, through the MDP program. Let's talk a little bit more about the MDP program before we close out, and if people are interested in looking into it more. So it's, I believe it's 13 weeks. Is that right, Steve? 13 weeks,
Yes.
26 different case studies that they're going to review. The case study
Yep.
method. You want to talk a little bit about that real quick?
Sure. So we start the first Monday after Labor Day, and then we run 13 Mondays, which usually takes us to the first Monday of December. And, there's 2 cases per Monday. So just as you said, there's 26 in all, and all of them are taught by different, Harvard Business School alum in the, Charlotte area. And they pick the case based on the industry and their area of passion. But because there's 26, we really do cover an MBA-like spectrum, from finance to strategy to marketing to ethics to lots of different things. Disruption is kind of my shtick, as we talked about. And so you really do get, exposure across a wide variety of subjects and a wide variety of companies and experiences, not only the instructors, but then the discussion and that they provoke within your colleagues. And, we have both a study group of 6 as well as the class of 30, which gives each of the students the ability, to really make whatever that case or that discussion relevant to them, relevant to their job now, possibly relevant to their career later. And we do strongly encourage the class as well as the study groups to stay together. So we have like a LinkedIn group and other things that we do and events that will invite people back to stay connected, to keep that networking bond as strong as possible, as strong as somebody wants it to be.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll tell you that there were a few case studies that did stick out that I really enjoyed. I mean, you know, we want to say we enjoyed all of them, but there are those that you just really, there's some you dig into deeper, right? You really felt it. You really had great takeaways from it. And so that will be the case, like you said, accounting, marketing, finance, operations, organizational behavior, leadership, ethics, even just I'm gonna call it financial literacy, right? But reading financial statements and the importance of that, especially as a leader works up, if they're, mid-career, they may or they probably have, but I think we all can do better at reading financial statements. And so that was right out of the gate. That was one in my class that was a takeaway. I felt confident that I knew how because I managed P&Ls, but there were still takeaways from that class, right? On looking at different financial statements.
Yeah, one thing that just to so I created a bot, an AI bot for this year's class, the MDP Case Study Assistant, and
Okay,
we learned a ton. And we're going to try and take those learnings and apply them, and obviously make it better for next year. We got very good reviews from the students. If I had to characterize, obviously there's always some folks in there that are experts, but in
sure,
general, I think they were kind of where I was before I got into this, which was kind of, they'd go to Chat GPT and use it like a Google search on steroids, but it really hadn't integrated it as an assistant to the job that they do at work or at home or whatever. And so that was the thing, not to and initially I thought that it was going to be for the financial side.
right,
90 to 95% of our class, that's not their job. So they don't have a lot of the experience and the financial literacy that I suspect you do. So the thought was, okay, here's a way to kind of quickly bring everybody up to speed and then have a discussion around, okay, do a cash flow, and then now we can talk about it and have the AI do that. And then I thought there'd be other cases where it wouldn't apply at all. And man, found out that it wasn't the opposite, but there were cases that you thought were, that it wasn't going to apply, and it ended up being just as relevant. And so anyway, we're that's a part of MDP that where we're trying to keep the program growing and relevant, and developing this AI bot was a very interesting step that we want to continue to grow with.
absolutely. I think that's outstanding. I've stayed in touch with two people in my study group pretty consistently, and then have actually interacted with a few other folks from the class in the last, I'm going to say, 3 to 4 weeks. So it's an outstanding program. I highly recommend it. If somebody is interested today, if they heard about MDP for the first time today and they're interested in learning more, or maybe being in the 2025 fall class, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and to find the program?
Yeah, I will. The best way is to get a hold of me is my email. So it's Steve dot Hindman at HBS Harvard Business School Charlotte. So hbscharlotte.com. You can send me an email, and I can send you information or set up a short call and go over it and answer questions. Happy to do either. We just do this by word of mouth so that we can save as much money as we can, so that we can give that to the nonprofits. So we usually cap the number of students at 30 each year, and we usually fill up by about end of May or June 1st. So if you're interested, let us know as soon as you can. And there is a tuition break if you sign up by May 1st.
Outstanding. Well, by the time this show airs, they'll still have some time to join. But I just want to say thanks again for your time. Thanks for all that you're doing. Appreciate you being a guest today and sharing with us about your career, your volunteer efforts, and your work with MDP. And yeah, that's it. Thanks again, and we'll stay tuned for more.
I really appreciate the time, Dustin, and really in helping to get the word out. But anyway, good stuff.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Your Impact Story, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.